It's just always made sense to rent where I want to be, and it gives me flexibility. And it also means my money's working for me. I think, a lot of people say, rent money is dead money, but it's not if you've got money working for you elsewhere. So yeah, I've been a very keen rentvestor and certainly a promoter of rentvesting when people can't afford their dream home straight off the bat.
Welcome to another episode of my podcast, Relentless Life on Your Terms. I have Emily Wallace joining us. Thanks for being here, Emily.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I always like having a fellow property connoisseur or property expert on my podcast, so might as well start there. How did you get into real estate, Emily?
Great question. I kind of got into it out of a need. I guess when I bought my first investment property, there wasn't really much help around that I could find, particularly for young people. And so when I did more research on first home buyers and the lack of help there was in the form of a buyer's advocate for them, I started to learn more about getting into the space and specialising in that field.
So you specialise as a buyer's advocate for first home buyers?
Yeah, first and family home buyers. The general rule of thumb is a property that someone will reside in.
Okay, and It's usually a first purchase would be
most
the main?
Yes.
And your normal demographic would be your age demographic? You said it was a lot younger than my traditional clients.
Yeah, so anywhere between sort of 25 to 35, young professional couple, usually with a dog, want a courtyard, maybe baby number one on the way.
Don't know how to get in. What are some of the typical questions they come to or concerns they come with?
The biggest thing is they don't understand the process. Like, how do I actually buy a property? What does it look like when I place an offer? Who comes into the process when? What's a conveyancer? Lots of questions, like anything doing it the first time. They don't know in what order something goes. So a lot of it's around that. And then, what is fair market value? What should we pay? How do we ascertain a price?
You also negotiate the prices for them?
Yeah, correct.
So they come to you usually pre-approved with their finance?
Correct. They've got their budget in mind, they've got their area in mind, they want us to find the best possible property and negotiate the best deal for them.
And what are you finding currently with the market conditions?
Look, there's no wow properties out there at the moment. I think there's a lot of sort of B-grade stock floating around. There's a little bit off market that's okay, but generally speaking, we're in a very low supply at the moment and a decent demand. So the market seems to be holding up okay across sort of the middle ring, but I would say more generally we need better stock.
It's funny I say that because I've been in real estate for almost 25 years, and I always say it's very cyclical. When there's a ton of buyers, it's hard to find great stock. When there's a ton of great stock, it's hard to find buyers. So there's always one challenge. I always say pick your poison because it's never going to be plain sailing.
Totally.
So you're finding this stock now is getting you feel snapped up quicker. People are not paying the same money. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think the good stuff's getting snapped up because there's such a lack of it. But then the other stuff's really lagging. And I think it's a lot of the uncertainty around the interest rates, affordability, and lifestyle for people. They're sort of reflecting on what's important to them. Travel's back a lot now. Weddings are back. So money's getting dispersed in other ways than it was, 2-3 years ago. I
think that's a very good analogy. And I see during COVID and people went ahead of their mortgages 4 or 5 years. But what happened is when they came out of COVID, people just were like a greyhound out of the gates. They just spent all their money. And I was saying to people, make sure you keep some of it on your mortgage or you invest and not just blow it all. And we're seeing that the travel gates have opened. People are really, and that's not a bad thing to spend the money that you saved. But I think it's always important that you learn the lessons of saving that money as well.
Correct.
So you can buy more real estate or you can invest or to set yourself up for retirement.
Yeah, indeed. And I think, people are lashing out on spending for travel and sort of seeing the world and getting out there after being locked up for so long. So I think deposits are getting eaten into a little bit, or savings. It sort of puts some people on the back burner for buying, but those who are ready are really ready and really keen. They just got to find the right thing.
And you're competing against a lot of other buyers.
Yeah.
I think so. It's always easier to get into the market. So you've been in real estate now for
5 years.
5 years?
Yeah.
And you started your business
in 2018.
In 2018, so 5 years ago, and you thought just through buying that process, I can help young individuals. Now you're also on a podcast as well.
Yes, correct.
Which is called?
My Millennial Property, co-host that with John,
Tell us a bit about that.
So the podcast focuses on very sort of baseline level tips, tricks, insights into home buying, and also touches on investment as well. But a lot of our listeners are first-time buyers, so a lot of questions about the process, the professionals that come into play when you're buying, and a lot of listener questions as well.
Because you obviously, as you mentioned before, you put like the conveyance and you put the right professionals in front of them that have done many transactions to make it as seamless as possible.
Correct.
Because buying a property can be daunting. people, they haven't got the confidence to get into the market. Some might have pre-approved. We have some clients that haven't even got their finance in place. We assist them with it, and it's like navigating through a minefield in some cases for them.
Yeah, correct. It's that thing of what happens when. There's a lot of confusion around that, which can vary state to state as well.
Can you share some of the tips and tricks that you share on your podcast too for some of our listeners that they might, some things or some red flags or some tips to get into the market that you share?
For sure. I think one of the biggest ones at the moment is a lot of people are buying in areas they've never lived in before. So I think that's quite a big move to put a fair bit of money into an area you're not too sure on. So my suggestion and one of my tips would be to try and rent, even if it's a short-term rental, in the desired area to check if you actually like the suburb before you commit to it for 5 to 10 years. And another one would be around understanding guarantor loans. A lot of first home buyers aren't familiar with how they work and don't seek the advice of a broker to sort of understand how mum and dad might be able to help them outside of a physical cash deposit. I think that would be a really big tip around leveraging a guarantor loan if you could to get you in the market sooner.
So that's basically leveraging resources and using other people's equity, or they can go guarantor on the loan, whether you're using their serviceability to be able to look at options. So that's why I always say to people, it's important to speak to a good broker.
Yes.
They can open those options for you, because a lot of people don't know that some not ready to get into the market, but they don't actually understand all the resources available to them.
Correct.
As one key example being a guarantor. What else?
I think the biggest thing is when you're inspecting properties, first home buyers often fall into the trap of looking at the styling and the look and feel of the property that's actually not going to remain with the property. So even things like music or a candle burning, don't get sucked in by the emotion that the agent or the stylist is trying to spark. Strip it away to the actual property itself. I actually love inspecting vacant properties. They're the best because you get to see everything for what it is. So don't get sucked in by the styling.
So basically the staging, I've never heard that before, because obviously you're going in there purely and simply representing the buyer.
Yep.
So you want them to see it for what it is, not getting it, because being a first home buyer, it's going to be an emotional purchase, or being something you're going to live in. You will pay over the money, and you see that at auction. So if you walk in there, they've got that nice candle, the property staged, you find yourself spending 5-10% more than you should, because you're not walking into the bare bones of that property.
Correct.
That's very, very good advice.
Yeah, styling is, that's why vendors spend so much money on it, because it actually helps the price to, be inflated and go really well, and particularly in the home buying market. So just be really careful. And I guess on top of that, listen out for music. Music in properties is often masking a noise that doesn't want to be heard, on a main road or a tram line.
Airplane or
the amount of, when I hear music at an open, I just ask at the end, kindly, do you mind if I just turn it down so I can hear what it actually sounds like in here, because the music's not really telling. I'm not going to have music playing all the time when I live in my property. So
they sound like very basic tips, but they're very clever things to look out for. I remember a friend of mine was looking at renting a property at the back of a train line, and the agent would be showing that property a specific time for that reason. Because when they move in, they'd always hear that train line, and you could actually feel the vibration
Rattles.
of the train. Yeah, it was crazy. So you don't think of those things until you've actually been told or you've been caught out.
Correct.
So they are amazing tips.
Yeah, they're only little ones, but they can make a big difference, particularly, living in the property. What's it actually going to be like? You 100%. Need to really think about that.
And especially if it's not a rental and you've spent, in your case, you mentioned before they spent 700,000-900,000 on a property.
Yeah.
Is there any predominant areas in Victoria that you focus on?
Yeah, so we have a strong corridor through the northern suburbs, out to sort of Reservoir Way, below the Ring Road, and then Bayside Southeast as well for first and family homes. So
I assume they're mostly townhouses and houses. They're apartments as well?
We do buy a lot of apartments, but we're very careful with what apartments we purchase because, apartments do get a bad rap. There are some good ones out there, but you really have to be very specific on what you buy and where you buy it. But a lot of first home buyers, that's what they can afford. So they do get into the apartment market as their sort of stepping stone property.
Of course. And obviously buying apartments, I always tell people, look at the medium house price and making sure that apartment is way under the medium house price.
Yeah.
It hasn't got a cookie cutter approach. It's got good natural light. It's got a good usage of space. I think apartments, I always found as investments don't grow as much.
Correct.
But it is an entry level stock in some areas.
Yeah.
I think it should go in terms of preference based on my experience, an apartment, townhouse, house.
Yes.
Depends on how you can afford it.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you advise your clients to look out for when purchasing an apartment?
The biggest thing is around the block maintenance itself and also the body corporate and how it's managed. So there's the apartment on a micro level, but then the building more so on a macro level of do the owners care about the common areas? You know, what sort of money's going into maintaining those,
The
the
sinking
look and
fund,
feel?
you mean, and stuff,
Yeah,
of course.
correct. How many people are actually active in the body corporate with the meetings and decision making and things like that? When you get a lot of investors in one block, you often find they're not too worried about it until it comes time to sell, as long as they're getting their cash flow in the interim. So you've got to be really careful to make sure people care about the building. And then on a micro level, the actual apartment itself, definitely something that is not a cookie cutter. We don't like cookie cutters, or what we call a snorkel window, you know, those bedrooms that have the tiny little one.
Yeah.
Yep. We don't like those. Something that maybe has an island bench in the kitchen to give more of a home feel than just like a galley kitchen. And something that has an outdoor space. You don't want an apartment with no ability to get some fresh air. So some sort of terrace or balcony would be ideal.
That's great advice, and I'm going to further add to that. You look at, I think a good rate is, you look at the percentage owner occupiers versus investors.
Yeah.
You want the investor rate to be as minimal as possible, because you're also competing with people renting and people selling it. And if people are owner occupiers, usually they tend to look after their property a lot better.
Correct.
And in this case, when we mentioned sinking fund, the more money they've got there to upkeep the common areas, how strong those funds are,
Yeah.
will make that property look not as outdated as
Yeah.
ones that don't have those money, because we've seen that a lot.
Yeah, it's just like when you own a house, you put money into maybe painting the fence or updating the roof. You know, the same approach is going to be taken for the actual apartment block itself, where the apartment lives. So yeah, having an eye on the body corporate, go through the meeting minutes, even speak to the body corporate. We do that a lot for clients to understand what are they caring about, what are the upcoming projects, and what money do they spend on an annual basis in the upkeep through cleaners and that sort of thing.
You've shared some very, very good tips and things that people might not be aware of, and that's why I always say to people, it's so important to go to someone who's done multiple transactions, who understands the market thoroughly, because I always say cheap advice, free advice is usually the most expensive advice. Go to an expert that can really share their knowledge with you, because you can avoid things that might cost you tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars in opportunity cost, in capital growth, or a number of different areas.
Correct, yeah.
And once you do something once or twice, I think your confidence builds and your competence will build to be able to buy more properties. Correct. Do you get many clients repeat after they've bought one property off you?
Well, not yet, but we're starting to get into that space of, we're actually helping a lot of mum and dads buy for their children. And so some of them have multiple kids. So we've just bought for one client who we're on to their second child, and their third one will be next year. And then we're going to buy their downsizer, because if all three kids move out, then they need somewhere to downsize to. But not as frequent as we would if we had investor clients who might go, you know, every 2 years they might buy a property, or buy multiple even in 1 year. We want to buy properties that people live in for 5 to 7 years before they sell on or, you know, upsize. So not quite that cycle yet. But we do get a lot of recommendations from first home buyers who have friends that are also.
So it's mainly referrals, and I like that you said yet, because obviously you're going to be in the industry for a lot longer, so you will see those clients come through again. But because they're buying their first home, which is in most cases a much longer purchase, we do sell investment stock. We do buyers advocacy as well, but predominantly we do investment stock. So we see our clients a lot more regularly, because they're purchasing 3, 4, 5 properties.
Correct.
But in your case, if they're buying their first home, or in some case one they're going to live in for maybe 10 plus years, you haven't seen them yet, but it's good, that a very, very good sign they're referring their kids, their friends, because obviously your service works.
Yeah, it's great to get recommendations and referrals, and even though, you know, the client might not come back for a number of years, we go back and visit them in their home, which is one of my favourite parts of the job. So yeah, it's a good relationship to keep long standing.
Why do you love real estate?
I think the diversity in the properties that you get, like there's so many different variations on homes, and I think at a fundamental level it provides shelter for people, and that's so important. So being a part of that and having someone create their own shelter, their own home, is really, really special. Now,
also I read, and I was very happy to see you've won a couple of awards of late as well.
Yeah, a few awards here and there.
Tell us about them.
Probably the one I'm most proud of is the Newcomer of the Year for real estate, because I'd only been in it for a year before I got that award.
That was in 2019.
Yeah, correct.
I read it,
Had a few nominations for things like Rising Star and Buyer's Agent and things like that. So very lucky to have exposure to those sorts of awards and be a part of the industry that recognises people in the space.
You should be very proud, and it's well done.
Thank you.
And it's very good. Now, I read as well you do a little bit of work with charity.
Yeah, correct.
Tell us about that.
So we started with a new partner charity last year called Eat Up, and they provide meals or sandwiches, I should say, to children who come to school with no lunch. So a lot of regional work is mostly where they distribute the sandwiches to, but we actually host events where we make the sandwiches, they go on to the truck and they deliver the next day. Just the classic cheese toasty, they freeze well, they toast well, and so yeah, we've partnered with them and it's been really enjoyable and really eye-opening as well.
It's always good to help and do good things in the community.
Yeah.
I love doing a lot of things with Vinnie's, but one of my CIOs, well, my CIO at the time, not one of them, came and actually presented that idea where we spend a couple $1,000s, you buy the ingredients, you make the sandwich, you give them out, and that's what I was asking. Is it the same thing? What parts of regional Victoria?
They do a lot in Ballarat and Geelong.
We sell a lot there, actually.
Oh, there you go. And they're expanding as well. And I know they also have a truck up in Queensland too. So it's honestly, the guy who founded it, he literally was making them in his mum's kitchen when he found out the kids were coming to school with no lunch.
That's
and then
fantastic.
expanded from there. So yeah,
this is really nationwide cool.
now? Mainly Vic and Queensland, and I believe they're expanding.
Another key thing and a very hot topic now, which has become very, very prevalent due to property prices going up and people wanting to live close to amenity, close to work, close to friends, but not being able to afford, is rentvesting, which it's well documented. I've been a rentvestor for many, many years, which, Emily, I know you're a rentvestor too.
Correct, yeah. I've been a rentvestor for, 8 years now, I think.
Why?
Yeah. Because it's just always made sense to rent where I want to be, and it gives me flexibility. And it also means my money's working for me. I think, a lot of people say, rent money's dead money, but it's not if you've got money working for you elsewhere. So yeah, I've been a very keen rentvestor and certainly a promoter of rentvesting when people can't afford their dream home straight off the bat.
I love that too. And I actually made a saying, say, rent money is extremely smart money if you invest.
Correct. Yeah.
And I always say to people, your debt is 100% tax efficient. You're investing in areas that are primed for growth, that have great forward indicators.
Yeah.
If you look at the property clock that are 9 o'clock and that you might want to live in a certain area, but that doesn't mean it's the best area for you to invest.
Yes.
Now I think it's kind of been forced upon many people because it's becoming unaffordable to live where they want to.
Yeah.
So people are becoming rentvestors. They might be renting, they might be investing in regional Victoria, regional Australia, interstate, and I think now it's become more of a kind of a forced option, which ironically it's a better option.
Yeah, there's some people who I think have also taken the advantage of first home buyer incentives and then flipped it to an investment and sort of gone first home buyer then rentvestor, which is interesting. I do find it sort of an interesting path when people take advantages of the sort of incentives that are there, stamp duty reduction or even grants.
Yep.
That does mean you have to live in the property for a certain period of time, So if you're willing to uproot your life where it is to take advantage of those incentives, then great. And it's worked for some people, particularly in COVID. I've had clients who have done that and it's turned out really well for them because they recognise that their ultimate PPR will not qualify for stamp duty reductions. But more generally, I think sometimes you have to forego those incentives to actually get up on the property ladder properly. And most of the time that means rentvesting, buying your investment property first, then getting into your own home.
Of course, and I get asked that question a lot, and I say to the people, whatever the grant is, don't make a decision based on that. Get all the information and make an informed decision. Funny story, I actually got my grant on my sixth or seventh property.
Yeah.
I bought a house in Hillside and I called the finance company at the time and they said, Chris, you can't get the first homeowner's grant, you own property. I then called the State Revenue's office and I asked the question and they said, can you prove you've never lived in the properties, of which most were interstate? Yes. Were they purchased after this date? Yes. You can get the grant.
Correct.
I said, really?
I've done the same phone call.
Yep. I called, it's so funny, I called the guy, I said, I can. He goes, no, you can't. I go, yes, I can. This is what the State Revenue Office is. And I actually called back another person to get the same answer to make sure that I was right. And I actually did get that because I could prove that it was purchased after.
Yeah.
But whether you can or you can't get it, I think it's important to get all the information. I don't think you should make a decision of that nature for 10 or 20,000 because you still got to consider your moving costs. You're uprooting your life, as you said. There's so many other fundamentals that go with it. And if you don't even lose the first homeowner's grant, which in my case I didn't know, and I'm going to ask you about your story, it's important to get the information.
Correct.
So you did something very similar to me?
I've made the phone call to know if I can use it. I haven't yet bought one where I've been able to utilise it yet. It's probably maybe my next purchase or maybe the one after that potentially, where I'll probably be able to take advantage of it. But to be honest, I would have to assess whether changing my lifestyle of where I live to live in that property for the 12 months is worth it. It might not be. But yeah, I was very happy when I made that phone call to find out I've got 3 investment properties and I can still go ahead and use the first home buyers grant. So
it pays to question stuff, trust but verify, I always say. And you want to know something, pick up the phone, call the state revenue office. It was a $20,000 call at the time that I found that out. And I had the own finance company, who was a great finance company, by the way, not know the law but pertain to that and saying to me, Chris, you can't get it. And I did. So what are some of the other advantages of rentvesting, and why do you think it's a great idea? You mentioned the tax, you mentioned areas.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that you are a borderless investor. You know, if you live where you want to live and you take the attitude of the Australian market as a whole, not just Victoria or not just New South Wales, whatever it might be, you can invest where the money stacks up. And that really, on my second purchase, really opened my eyes. The first one, I just researched Melbourne and I stuck Melbourne and it paid off okay. I was a bit lucky. But in terms of understanding the rentvesting strategy, you can buy anywhere in Australia, and that's the beauty of it. You don't need to physically go and see the property or live in it or, you know, make sure that you like it. It's really about the numbers stacking up and having someone help you to realise that as well.
So in summary, you're a lot more nimble with your investing and what you do. And I say that to people too. A lot of people, they invest with emotion, with their heart, not with their head. I said, you invest with logic. I said to them, what's the one reason you invest for? People say to make money. I said, that's the 100% the train of thought you should go into investing.
Yes.
When you're buying your own home, and especially the people that you deal with, I understand the emotional elements.
Yes.
Because yes, you want it to make sense. Yes, you want to make money, and yes, you want it to be an investment. But because you're an owner-occupier, I'm comfortable with you using a lot of your heart for that decision.
Yeah.
When it comes to investing, and I say to clients, whether it's a local or international share, what you invest for, they go to make money. Why would property be any different if you're not going to look at it? But some people are emotional investors. I remember many, many years ago, my father, at the time we lived in Taylor's Lakes. He bought 4 or 5 properties, all in Taylor's Lakes and Keilor. Reason being, my dad liked to drive past and wave.
Yeah.
And I asked him, have the houses ever waved back at you, Dad?
Yeah.
And he said, no, but my father wanted to see his asset or what he owned. And I think it's a very old mindset, but I understand why it came from that. But
it's also what you know as well. Sometimes, you know, you hear of backyard investors, like they're just buying in the suburbs that they know, that they maybe own their own home in, and then they've bought a second one just around the corner. It's, I would challenge that.
With, yeah. But it's what they're comfortable. But again, it goes down to my first property I bought was a 3-bedroom townhouse in New South Wales, Tweed. 183,900. I remember it. Many, many years ago. And I was living in Victoria. And back then it was... I guess it wasn't as common or as prevalent for people to be buying interstate, but like you said, if you're looking only at your local area, I think you're looking at things with blinkers on. The best investment might be Australia-wide. Just because you live in an area that you like or love, doesn't mean, and in most cases, it's not the best area to invest.
Correct.
And you might want to diversify as well. Different areas peak at different times.
Yes.
And I always say to people as well, they go, is now a good time to invest? And I always say yes. In some area in Australia.
Yeah, somewhere,
It depends where.
Yeah.
And that comes down to research.
Big time.
So do you get any rent investors or?
No, as in we've had people who have been rentvesting and now they're ready to buy their own home. So we have had people in the sense that they're the first home buyer, but they're not a first property buyer.
Does that help with their knowledge, or does that help with their confidence, what you found?
It can help with their confidence, but still, no matter what property purchase number you're up to, when it's your own home, the emotion is still there. So we really have to rein people back in as to what they're buying.
How do you do that?
The biggest.
Do you manage your expectations when it comes to what they're trying to buy?
Big time. Even at the point of the first point of contact, if we think that they're, wanting champagne on a beer budget, then we don't engage. Yeah. So very much so. Need to make sure we're all on the same page and that there's evidence that we can replicate something that's sold recently in budget with the right sort of floor plan, block size in the area, to be able to go and find it again for them.
When you're referring to evidence, you want comparable sales in the last 6 months?
Ideally 3, but 6.
I usually get quite a lot of examples. As you see, most valuations, they've got similar, inferior, and inferior products. I want to look at all of them and really analyse what's the square meterage rate, what's the house, how long was it built, because you really get a good understanding of the market. And I think that first conversation is probably the most crucial, because you're managing a client's or a buyers' expectations.
Yes, correct.
If you don't do that, it's an uphill battle all along the way.
Yeah. I mean, now my favorite thing is to say no, because I've said yes to people they should have said no to in the past. And I think every business owner learns that along the way. But yeah, telling someone, no, we can't help you right now because you're way off, actually helps them readjust. And some of them do circle back. They do their research, or they increase their pre-approval, or they readjust, and they do circle back.
I do actually like, and I read where you said that by saying no, it allows you to have more time to be able to do the things that you can help people with.
Correct. Yeah.
Which is important, but a lot of people are so happy to have that business that they just want to say yes, yes, yes. What are your main plans for the business?
The biggest thing at the moment, we're sort of in this time of change because I really value a lean business in terms of lean on people, but good on outcomes. So we're sort of at the point of, I like being lean with good people that you can trust. So we will eventually go through a rebrand of the business. At the moment, it's under my name, and I need to remove my name from it. It's built it to a certain point, and now it's time to bring some other people in. So that's sort of happening and helping to train some more BAs in the space. But more generally, I want to play more of a role in the buyer's advocate space of promoting best practice as buyer's advocates, and sort of getting a bit of a baseline education going, because I think the industry kind of needs it. So helping collaborate with people to sort of go on a business venture in that path as well.
To generate more buyer's advocates or more buyers?
Not necessarily more buyer's advocates, but help the buyer's advocates who do exist to operate on a best practice basis.
So increase their knowledge base.
Correct. Yeah, education.
And to work with them as a JV, or just do it as a course and off you go?
More as a course sort of style. Some people might be a joint venture of revenue share or profit share if it's
different
more
states,
consulting.
different areas.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, but more generally, more around baseline level best practice, because I think it's kind of lacking at the moment.
Well, knowledge is always very, very important, and you want the people that are going out as buyers advocates to be knowledgeable like yourself, because every mistake can cost a lot of money.
Correct.
And I always say to people, the first investment property, I know you don't sell investment properties, is probably the most important. People say to me, why? I said, because it's like a stepping stone to your second, third and fourth property. If I put a stepping stone that's so far ahead, which is I'm maximizing your ability to borrow and I'm over leveraging you,
yes,
by the time you get back into the market, it might be 3, 4, 5 or 6 years.
Correct.
But if I put something in front of you, you can borrow $800,000, but we use a $500,000 property, and then we buy another $500,000. It's an easy process to repeat.
Correct.
And it's more predictable. So I always say to people, the first property is the most important. But in your case, not over leveraging, because when I was a lot younger, I over leveraged. I bought 8 properties. I was 24, waiting for everything to go good. Lost my employment. Long story short, lost it all because I was over leveraged. Borrowing was a lot easier back then than it was now.
Yes.
And then I lost all my portfolio, which is funny enough. When I started this business, I knew that I had the knowledge base.
Yes.
And I put the right systems in place, and I wrote a book about it, Your Path of Brick by Brick, and we've come up with a Reventon formula to make sure that people invest safely and securely.
Yeah.
To not make the mistakes I made as a 24-year-old.
Yeah, which is super important. And if someone can learn from someone else's mistakes, I mean, that's such a valuable lesson that they don't have to go through themselves. They can,
100%.
can learn from it. Yeah.
And I think it's important when you speak to someone, and I say this, whether they go to a buyer's advocate, they come to a company like ours, they have a proven track record. They've been operating for years.
Yeah.
We've helped over 3,200 Australians get into the property market that have that track record, because they've done that multiple times, that they've sold in that area. They're knowledgeable in that area.
Correct.
And even just with those tips that you've shared, I know you know what you're doing.
Yeah, and we love it too. That's the biggest thing is, I think being in an industry, I'm sure you're the same, where you're really passionate about what you do and you really love what you're doing, then it becomes, education's just part of that as well.
It shines through.
Yeah.
If someone lives and breathes what they do and they have a proven track record, they're 2 necessities for me to work or listen to someone. And I think it's so important in any space. Yeah,
100%.
How do people get in touch with you if they want to speak to you?
Pretty active on Instagram, but if you look up our website, just emilywallace.com.au, can get in touch through there as well. All social links are there, but Instagram is probably my main platform at the moment.
So we'll share the links in the comments below. Very important to speak to the right professionals. If you're a first home buyer that wants to get into the market, reach out to Emily and her team, and I'll sure than happy to have a chat with you. Now, Emily, you ready for your quick fire questions?
I'm ready.
Let's go. Now, who has influenced you most in your life?
Probably my dad. Yeah.
I get parents a lot. I love that answer. Can I ask quickly why?
He's big into real estate as well, and just has a really good way of doing business.
When you're not working, how do you like to spend your free time?
Hanging out with my dog, Henry, and walking.
What's your go-to stress management technique? When you're really stressed, what do you do?
Walk a lot,
Walk.
yeah.
Henry and walk.
Yeah.
What's the first thing you do when you wake up?
I get up, get dressed, and pretty much get straight out the door as soon as I can, get down to the beach.
Ready to rock.
Yeah.
Now, if you had one superpower, what would it be?
Invisibility.
Invisibility. Tell me something no one knows about you.
Very few people know that I was classically trained in opera
There you go. All
when I was
right.
younger.
Maybe we'll get a song later. Beach or mountains?
Beach.
Summer or winter?
Summer.
Call or text?
Cool.
I'm a call person
Yeah.
too. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Pizza or burgers?
Pizza.
Beef or chicken?
Chicken.
Beer or wine?
Wine.
Would you rather have all the money in the world or all the power in the world?
Oh, gosh, that's deep, isn't it?
It is.
My first instinct is power, because I think money comes with that eventually.
Oh, well, this one, I think I know the answer. Would you rather be rich or famous?
Probably famous.
Lose all your money or all your memories?
Oh, all your money. Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how much have you enjoyed being on the podcast?
11.
I've absolutely loved having you. Not as old or experienced in the industry, but you've shared some amazing tips. I can tell you're very good at what you do. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
I hope everyone's enjoyed as much as I have. Remember, if you like my content and my podcast, like and subscribe to see much more content and great people like Emily speak. Thank you.